Hi everybody, welcome back to the painting channel. Today it's a watercolor, it's a moody sky. Just want a bit of fun with a watercolor painting for you. So let's roll that intro, let's see what happens. Hi everybody, welcome back. As I said at the start, it is a little watercolor this week. What I wanted to do was play around and try and create a moody sky. I wanted to throw a few colors on the paper, let them fuse and work together and see what happened, and hopefully at the end of it end up with a nice little landscape. So before we dive on into that and see what happened, let me just thank each and every one of my subscribers, both new and old. Thank you so much for all the support that you give the channel. And you know what I'm going to say, if you're not a subscriber and you're watching this, please consider subscribing. It really does help the channel grow and reach a much greater audience around the world. That would be fantastic. And when you get to the end of the video, give it a thumbs up, give it a like if you've enjoyed it, and moreover add comments. I love reading them and I'll always answer them for you. So with that all said and done, if you want a lot more, then don't forget my Patreon. Nip on over there, have a look. All the details and the links are in the show more tab underneath this and every other video. But take a look at it. The tiers are only $5–10 a month, and for that you get so many videos to enjoy, and they're being added to all the time. There is also a live stream every Friday evening at 7 o'clock without fail, unless I'm ill, that is, and I hope that never happens very often. And at the same time, there is a dedicated Facebook channel purely for my patrons to interact with me and with each other, to post their work up, to ask questions, get answers, get help. And it's such a great community. So if you want to look at that, take a dive on over there, and know if you do get involved, every penny you put in helps support me to create more and more videos each and every week for you all to enjoy and learn from. So with all that plug-in done and sorted out, let's get on. Let's have a look at this painting. Let's see what happened when I started throwing some paint on paper. Okay, what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to draw a very simple little landscape. Something with a very low horizon line, maybe just another secondary line up through there. And I'm going to put in a few sort of trees. What I'm going to do, I'm going to bring down a nice set of hills down through there. That would be good. Somewhere maybe on my native Romney marshes. So we've got the nice downs at the background. We've got some nice trees here. That is possibly a little too big, so I might change that one. Let's just see about that. Now I'm going to bring that down. I'm going to make that, I'm going to make that a lot smaller. I'm going to make it about there. I think that would look better. I'm going to take that out in a moment and get rid of that. I'm just going to bring in one or two more distant trees through here, and let's bring in a nice tall one on this side here. Okay, so we're going to bring that through there. I did take a little bit out. I wasn't quite happy with the shape of that. So let's put our hill back in, and then let us just go and put in some more distant trees through here. Something like that, small one. Maybe, well, actually not so distant. Let's actually bring them closer. Let's leave that one where it is. And let's just change that line and put that down through there at a bit more of an angle, I think. And then let's bring in a much taller tree here, still below our hillside, and let's bring that in there. Nice little side bush to that. Now we're getting somewhere, and we've got a little one there. These are distant ones. These are not quite on the hillside, but they are sort of getting over that way, so they will be much more distant than these ones on this side. And I'm going to bring that down through here, maybe a little post or two, bit of fence line, something like that. Always quite interesting to delineate a field edge. Bring another small shrub, just topping that, cutting through that line there, and I think that will work very nicely. And then I'm going to be using some sort of not exactly an avenue, not a track, but sort of field lines to suggest maybe where a tractor's been. Something like that. Coming across there and give a nice directional pull into the whole picture. I'm going to put a few more trees in the distance back over here. Maybe a line of them through there. A little bit of light going to catch that field, I think. But here's where I want to play with the idea of the sort of stormy sky. So right now we've got that done, let's look at getting some color going. Okay, so for the first colors I'm going to be using quite a bit of the Ultramarine Violet. It's a really lovely color, and tap into that a little bit, not too much, a little bit of Indian red, but at the same time I'm going to add some some Ultramarine Blue to this end. So I've got a bit more blue, a bit violet, and a little bit more red. And then I'm going to really mess it up with some indigo. It's a great stormy sky colour, these indigos. Anyway, okay, I don't think I've mixed nearly enough up, so I'm going to bring a little bit more together and just tap into that. A little bit more of that blue. Okay, I think we're set to go now. But I could do with a bigger brush, but I actually haven't got a big one with me at the moment, so we're going to have to make do with what we've got. I just want to sort of play around with the idea of putting some really splashy marks on here and just working it very energetically. That was the whole idea. I'm going to be using some yellow ochre into that as well, just to play around with these lights and darks and the storm and the clouds. And I just want to see how this paint really just plays around. Gets very energetic. It's a lot of fun. It may not even turn out, but hey, who cares? It's just having a bit of fun with some watercolour. And if it works, then so be it. And if it doesn't, then I'll just turn the paper over and use it as a practice piece for something else. Could have been a lot more energetic had I had a bigger brush to hand. And I've left them at the gallery, so I haven't got them with me. So there you go. It's a lesson to be learned. Right, I'm going to add in a little bit of more indigo coming into there, just as a real influence on the way this cloud is forming up. Like that. Maybe a little through there as well. And you can see I'm scratching around with the brush marks. I'm sort of moving them all over the show. Bring some up in there, lose some of that white, and some of it's great, but not too much of it. And let that come down, and finally a little bit of blue and a little bit more indigo, just coming down to the edge of the hills, like that. And then I want to put in a more yellow through there. I have no idea how this is going to dry up, but the thought was that to have this real energy in the cloud itself. I'm going to bring some more of that yellow just as a final bit through there. Bring that down to our hills. Now while that's still wet, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually be very careful about this, and I want to see if I can't put my hills in, because they are going to be getting quite a bit of dark colours. So I'm going to put that in, and hopefully it won't blow back that way too much. My paper is on a nice angle, so I'm rather hoping I can get away with that. But I want to put an amalgam of colours also into the hills, like that. But they need to be quite distant, so I'm trying to put in some blues and violets, just to give me the sense. I can go over this again, and I probably will, but I just wanted to put in this nice, continue that on down, so some of this will flow into the top and break up those edges. Just a real energy and power. And you know, the sky really doesn't look like that, to be quite honest. It doesn't. But at the same time, it's a feeling. You invoke a feeling of the energy that the cloud, all these, you know, you can see the bubbling of the cloud, and I like that. That's the effect that I was looking for. And it is an experiment. I mean, you put a colour on, And yes, within reason, you've got a bit of control. But you put water to it and you add another colour to it, you do not know where that colour is going to end up running to. And I'm letting this dry quite naturally. That's why I come in with a hill, because it's going to flow down and it's going to flow into these areas. I can make more of these areas further on in the painting. For the short term, I'm going to let this dry up now, and I'm going to come back and this will have just settled and dried as it wanted to, and I find that very, very exciting. Okay, before I do let this edge totally dry up on me, I'm just going to put in a really light Aureolin, touch of green and a touch of that yellow ochre. Just want to run that through there, give that lovely sense of light that I spoke of. You can imagine a bit of sunshine just catching the backfields there and giving that sense of sun that's running through there. And whilst we're then doing that, I can drop other colours into that. I'm going to drop a little bit of raw sienna into that same colour mix so that it varies it ever so slightly, especially coming down towards the next field, so you just get a sense of that light like that. And then when we're really going on, let's get some of that blue going. Let's get a bit of the Phthalo green, very energetic green. Let's put a bit of orange into that, temper it down, but I don't want it too strong. I just want to put in the foreground field. Lots of water. This is merely an undercoat, base coat, and I'm going to suggest and try and leave a lot of glistening parts. By that I mean just letting the brush skip over the surface as much as I can and allow some random white bits of paper just to pop through here and there, and they're not contrived, they just appear where they appear. And that's it. I'm going to let that dry up now totally, and we can go back in and we can put a few trees in, all the bits of detail, and the painting's done. Okay, so I've just dried off the first layer, and the sky, in my opinion, is really exciting. I'm quite happy with the way that's turned out, and it was just allowed to dry under its own devices, and yeah, I think it works. I then continued on down and I just put the base color of the field behind and the field in front, leaving a little bit of white paper just to glisten through in one or two places. So now that's dry, I'm ready, and it's not 100% dry, so there could be just that little bit of bleed in one or two places, but this area is quite dry. So we can carry on, put our trees in, and hopefully now we can bring this whole painting to a conclusion. So I'm going to go back in using some of this green that I had. I am using a couple of different brushes. I have a dagger brush on hand, and I'm going to put a little bit of burnt sienna into that now, making my greens a little bit darker in one or two places. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to look at my trees, and I'm going to put in and suggest that these are going to be nice and green, but not as dark as I could make them. I'm just tapping away here. I want to leave a few more dry marks. So I'm taking a lot of pigment or a lot of water out of the brush itself. I'm just going to scratch around a little bit and put in a few softer marks in that allow some of the lights to pop through, and just tapping in this way. And so there's not a lot of water in the brush, you can see that, you can tell that from this whole thing, but look at the way that this dagger allows you to experiment with edges, working in some of the negative spaces into this field. By scratching around like this, you create so many different little tuffets of grass that could be almost anything, but they each one adds to the information. Even small grasses and stuff, you can create them. So now we have a nice tree form. We're going to put in a darker value. I'm going to take that all the way through there, I think. Just come back in, a bit more paint on the brush using the very tip of this dagger. And that's another thing about these daggers, you've got so many sides, tips and other bits to create different shapes with. So it's a great all-round brush. Okay, I'm going to bring that through there, and this is like a ditch line, so I'm just going to drag that on and create another bush there using very much the same pigments. Just push that into place. We're going to put some darker marks in, don't worry. Just going to come on and drag that. It's almost like you can see there's a bit of a ridge there or ditch or something that's got little bits of growth and giving way to the grasses behind, in front and beyond. There we go. Alright, now for that, I got that same colour. I'm going to come in with more orange now. A little bit more green, make a real darky, warm colour. I do like using this orange in conjunction with everything. Just while this is down, just going to drop some into the base of this tree area. So we've got a bit of weight at the bottom, a little bit of coming up into there. Just mix it up a little bit. Like that. Nice dark base to it, so it's in shade. Good there. Bring up a little bit there. Going to bring some into the tree itself at this point. There you go. Take it through this line. Not totally replacing. There's pointless totally replacing everything you've done. Just bring a little bit in, just to vary up a little bit through there. There you go. We're going to use some more of this in a moment, so not to worry about sort of anything. You know, you're going to use some correlation between these warms and in the field here. So we're going to come back in and look at that. Just going to mix some of this up here. I felt that could be a little bit dark in places. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to put that down for a moment. We will come back to that in a little while. Go back to this larger brush. And I want to mix down some distant trees. So I'm going to use some violet, but I'm going to use some of the turquoise, and that's a little off. So I'm going to come back in with some green. That's even more off. Come back with a bit of orange. I'm going to start that all again. That mix really didn't work out. Okay, let's look at this a bit more closely. Right, I'm going to come in with some violet to start. Nice violet. There we go. Let's get that going. Let's come in with some sienna. I'm just looking for some distant tree greeny colour. Just a tap of the green in there. It's more of a grey. It's dirty grey green. That's probably closer. It's a lot cooler. This just got too warm, and that was the introduction of the orange. Now I'm going to take a lot of the paint out, just put a little bit in the tip of the brush. I'm just going to come back in and start suggesting some of these trees that are way off in the distance against the hills, like that. Now I could have gone in and done this a lot first, but I decided to put these dark ones in to begin with. Just going to mix it up a little bit. Let's see, I've already got a bird flying through the picture. Let's try and get rid of that quickly. And just bring in one or two bits of information as we go down towards what would be Hythe. And just along the Romney marshes. There we go. So we've got a whole range of different trees, shrubs, bushes off in the distance there. We can vary some of the shapes of these so they do look a little bit more like the trees and not just one line of paint. Just vary your marks. Have a look at what you've got to do. I'm doing this out of my head. There is no photograph that I'm working from. I've done a scene like this so many times, so I really know how it should look and what I'm trying to do. Just going to try and make that a little straighter through there. You don't see all that broken information from this sort of distance. So I'm just going to sort of just make a little bit more of a line at that point. Maybe there too. Alright, so I'm going to live with that and hopefully that'll be fine. I'm going to put in some greens and some grey-green colours, very similar to this tree outline, but a lot more water, because what I want to do is just put some variations into this distant set of hills. I think I want some more violet into that. It's got a little bit too green. There we go. That's probably better. So I'm just going to soften that as it comes down. This is the Downs heading towards Hythe and towards Folkestone. where it comes out at the top and becomes the sea, as it were, the cliffs, and take that all the way through there. I don't want a lot of information. I want your brains really to enjoy looking at it and sort of you make out what's going on. You can sort of see what's happening. Just don't want that to interfere with those trees too much, so I'm lifting back as I go. Just going to bring that down. I want to bring that through that tree. I knew that was going to happen. The tree's not quite dry, so it would have created a halo. Just lifting a bit off. Now, the reason I'm doing it is because I did make a little bit of a mess up here, and I'll sort of admit to that, but I don't mind doing it either. It does create some nice variations in that background hills. Quite an interesting effect just by a scrunched up damp towel and seeing what happens. Interesting. I'll let that dry because I quite like what's happened there. It is from an error. So make no mistake, it wasn't intended, it just was an error on my part. So I'm just repairing this area. I went a bit quiet because I wasn't quite sure how to deal with it for a second or two. But the idea is that when it's going wrong like that, then not to panic. Just look at it, assess the situation, and find a workaround that gets you back out of trouble and back on course. And I think that's come out quite luckily, quite alright. It could have gone the other way, of course, but I'm just glad it didn't. Okay, I'm just going to put a little bit more darker information in one or two places there, while it is again once more damp, like that. Useful information in our field, and I will come back in with a rigger. It's a nylon rigger, and I'm just going to come in with a bit of indigo into our dark umbers. Just going to suggest those fence posts that are coming across the field like that, making them pretty random. There we go. They get ever so smaller as they're going away down the ditch, like that. That's all it needs. Nice pastoral look to it, and I'm not actually going to do any more to the hills. I think that sort of blotting, in a sense, has really left a nice texture to the hills, so I'm going to live with that. I quite like that. So what I will now do, just to finish off, is I'm going to put some more warm colours. And that I'm going to be using some burnt sienna, a little bit of Indian red, a bit of the violet, mix that down, take a lot off in my paper, and just come through here and scratch some suggested marks in the field, leading lines, sort of, you can imagine furrows from the tractors in our field, and just leaving it very, very simply and understated, like that. Doesn't need to be anything more than that. I think that just says all it needs to. Going to drop a little bit more punchy browns into some of that. So I'm not quite sure what's going on, but there's little bits. I like that. I just love what that's doing. Doesn't have to be a lot in a picture to make a nice painting, but I think that that is quite simple. I think that it's all leading into this point, and we've got this nice, there's a little bit of a ball there in a sense. I'm not sure if I want to change that. Part of me wants to go back in and attempt to sort of make that shape just join in there a bit more. I think every time you go back into something like this, you do run the risk of creating some damage, so just be aware of that. I felt that that shape needed altering. And put a little bit of dark into there. Bring it over a little bit more. Maybe a good bit more on top. This is where do you stop? Learning when to stop. No, I think, and I've reached that time, I think I ought to stop. I'm going to put a little line up to join that into there. And maybe just a little bit of suggestion there. Little spars. Broken one. And leave it like that. Alright, okay, that's it. I'm going to go and do too much in a minute and regret it. I'm going to put a couple of birds in, I think, making this nice and full of life, as it were. Bring some down into the hills there. Odd numbers, always remember that. Always have odd numbers. There we go. I'm not going to count them out. That's odd anyway. But there you go. I think that works nicely. We've got a nice sense of light with the birds. We've got a nice expressive foreground, middle ground. The hills were a bit of an accident, but a nice discovery. I quite like what happened with those. And the sky was a free-for-all, and it worked out well. So, okay, so it's done. It's dusted, and it was a little bit of an experiment. And I have learned something from this painting myself to move forward with, and that's great. That tells me it's a good painting. It's always nice that if you've done a piece of work and you've learned something that you can take on into your next painting, it's a good piece of work. And I certainly have learned something from this one, and that's what painting's about. It's a learning curve for us all. So I do hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you'll have a go and throw a bit of paint around yourself at home, and if it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, don't worry about it and just get on with the next one. So in the meantime, happy painting. I will look forward to catching you all next Friday at 3 o'clock with a new video. I'm not sure what it's going to be as always, but there will be something there at 3 o'clock, so tune in at 3 on Friday, and yeah, enjoy this one. Catch you all soon. Take care everybody, stay safe, bye bye.
To what used to be home, passing by those little towns I know so well, stopping for gas and then I'm behind the wheel again. Driving this like a spiritual cleanse, where every mile is a new beginning and every bend holds a new end. Eyes on the road, don't lose control. I'm speeding fast to chase my soul. I'm driving to get away, running through